Welcome to Washington, D.C. on a cold and brisk day. We're standing here in 41-degree weather. I think it's somewhere in the 30s wind chill. We're standing in front of the Lincoln Memorial. Joyce and I walked about 5 miles in the cold against the wind to come here so we can bring this Facebook Live to you. You know, today we're standing at the memorial to a man whose voice changed America. Inside the Lincoln Memorial are two great speeches, his Gettysburg Address and his second inauguration, etched on the walls for the whole world to see. No speeches perhaps changed America more than Abraham Lincoln's Gettysburg Address. Well, I want to talk to you today about your voice. Maybe you have something to say, but you feel marginalized. You feel like nobody's listening, no one cares. You feel like maybe you can't make a difference with what you feel you have to say to either your husband, your wife, your children, your neighbors, your church, your friends, maybe the nation. I want to tell you the story today of a woman whose voice was almost silenced. I call this woman and her story, her amazing story, the song that changed a nation. Heaven had given her the voice of an angel. Her church choir nicknamed her Baby Contralto. But Baby Contralto's father was a poor day laborer, and she lived on the poor side of town in utter poverty. Yet her working class father worked overtime, managed to scrape together enough money to buy his child prodigy, his 6-year-old musical prodigy daughter, Baby Contralto, a second-hand piano. But there wasn't enough money left to pay for a voice teacher to train her. So Baby Contralto, this 6-year-old child genius, trained herself. When she was 12 years old, her working-class daddy died, leaving the family penniless. But by now, she had an amazing voice. She was an amazing phenom. Her church choir managed somehow to put together the money, $500 to pay for a voice teacher. $500 was a lot of money then. And these were poor working class people, but somehow they managed to scrape together the money because they saw in Baby Contralto an amazing genius. The world should be glad that that happened. Baby Contralto was soon after discovered by the New York Philharmonic Society. When she performed at Carnegie Hall, she brought the house down. She then embarked on a tour of Europe. She took the continent by storm, performing before kings and queens, the royalty of Europe. She was declared the greatest singer of her generation. The famed conductor, Arturo Toscanini, said of her, "A voice like hers comes along only once in a generation." After performing before royalty in Europe, she performed at the White House, before President Franklin Delano Roosevelt, and assembled dignitaries. Then her manager tried to get her a performance at the venerable Constitution Hall in Washington, D.C. But the Constitution Hall was owned by the Daughters of the American Revolution, largely a group of older, wealthy white women who refused Baby Contralto's offer to sing on their stage. You see, the Daughters of the American Revolution had a rule about Constitution Hall. Only white people were allowed to perform on the stage. People of color, like Baby Contralto, were not allowed to do anything but sit in the balcony. You could wonder why they refused to allow Baby Contralto to sing on their stage until you remember her name. Marian Anderson. Marian Anderson was a black woman, an African-American woman. Though she had sung before royalty in Europe, before presidents in the United States, she was not allowed to stay in most American hotels. When Eleanor Roosevelt, the First Lady of the United States, heard that she was refused the stage at the Constitutional Hall, she was irate. She begged the Daughters of the American Revolution to change their mind, but they refused to change their policy. And so Eleanor Roosevelt arranged for a concert here at Lincoln Memorial on a cold, blustery Easter day in 1939. And yet 75,000 people braved that cold weather to stand on this mall to listen to that historic concert given by Marian Anderson. Millions more people listened by radio across America and the world. And there was that one boy, a 10-year-old boy in Atlanta, Georgia, a little African-American boy whose life was changed when he listened with millions of others to that radio broadcast of Marian Anderson singing here on Easter of 1939. His name was Martin. Martin Luther King had a dream that day when he heard her sing that he too could change America. 24 years later, in 1963 in August, he stood on the same steps up here at the Lincoln Memorial, the same steps that Marian Anderson had sung from, and he delivered his famous "I Have a Dream" speech. That speech contained a line from the lyrics of the first song that Marian Anderson sang that day. God bless America, America the beautiful, land of the free. Let freedom ring. Marian Anderson would go on to become a legendary diva. In a day when the word diva meant something, she would win the Presidential Medal of Freedom, be awarded a Grammy for a lifetime achievement. But Marian Anderson, before she died, would say that the greatest day of her life was when she influenced a 10-year-old boy named Martin Luther King, who went on to change the prejudice and the bigotry that had kept her from singing on the stage at the Constitution Hall on that day in 1939. Maybe today you have a voice. Maybe you want to say something. Maybe you feel marginalized like Marian Anderson, denied a stage, denied the opportunity to sing the song that maybe God has given you. I remember another story of Martin Luther King's namesake, a German monk by the name of Martin Luther, who in the 16th century, in the 1500s, was dragged before a court shortly after he started the Protestant Reformation. All the kings and queens of Europe, many of them were there at this place called Worms, along with the Emperor of Europe, Charles V, noblemen, cardinals, bishop. The combined power of church and state was gathered there at this place called Worms. Two sons of Christopher Columbus were in the crowd that day. Martin Luther, before that great assemblage, was told to desist, to quit teaching, to quit preaching his message. And he looked at that assembled power and he said, "Here I stand. I can do no other. God has given me a word to say. I can say nothing other than the word he has given me to say." Afterwards, he left that hall, shaking in his boots from that experience. And he said to his friends, "I felt like a solitary little bird, warbling my feeble little song in the face of a howling wind, and nobody heard." Maybe today you feel like a solitary bird, warbling your little song in the face of a howling wind. Nobody listens. Maybe you feel marginalized. Can I tell you this? Can I share with you? I felt the same way, but I've learned these things. First of all, get on your knees. Go before God and say, "Do you want me to sing that song? Do you want me to say those things?" Make sure that your message is God's message to give to somebody else. Number two, pray to God that he'll give you the right time, the right spirit, the right place to say that message in the right way. Number three, if it's the message God has given you, have the courage to say it. Number four, realize that if it's a message that's hard for people to hear, you may be persecuted for that message. Jesus himself said that people love the false prophets because they say what they want to hear, but they stone and they destroy true prophets because they say what people don't want to hear. If you have something to say, it's a tough thing to be said to someone. If it's an honest thing you need to say, understand you may not be received well. Number five, say the message, give it. Do what God has called you to do. Say what the message he's given you. Sing the song he's given you to sing. And finally, number six, be patient. Marian Anderson took many years before she was able to sing on the steps of this Lincoln Memorial. Abraham Lincoln worked many years before he was able to bring freedom to African Americans so they could do things that Marian Anderson was able to do here. It was 24 more years before Martin Luther King was able to speak here and say, "Let freedom ring," to give a dream that America could be free, that people like Marian Anderson could one day sing on the stage of Constitution Hall and anywhere else, and to say what they had to say and to sing what they had to sing. 24 more years. And it was years after Martin Luther King was assassinated before African Americans had the full freedom. And still today, people don't have the freedom, all the freedoms yet. The freedom to say what they want to say in all parts of the world. But you live in America. You've been given the freedom to speak your mind, to sing the song God has given you. So if you have something to say, you go out and say it. God has given you a message. He's put you on this earth, perhaps, for such a time as this. Well, we'll see you again in 2 days on Thursday, same time, from sunny and I hope a lot warmer